one that they have various categories. They have Spätlese, Auslese, um, Beerenlese, and Trockenbeerenlese, and each one has more Botrytis cinerea, which is what's called the noble rot. And what that is,
Yeah.
particularly with white Riesling, in the fall when it's getting ready to be picked, if the weather conditions are correct, which means rainy and moist, the grapes will start rotting. And in a lot of varieties, a rotten grape at that time gives you a vinegar smell, and they just rot. It's just garden variety bunch rot. But with the Botrytis cinerea, what happens is as the grapes rot, they suck up the moisture in the grape, and by doing so, they increase the percentage of dissolved solids vis-a-vis the total number of liquids in the grape. So you get the sugar rising. And conversely, from other things, as sugar rises with Botrytis cinerea, acid comes up too. So you could have something that goes 31, 32, or 33% with still high acids. And that's what the late harvests are. The American taste has been such that that's not particularly highly valued. And our biggest customer and our best customer, so far as Riesling is concerned, is an outfit in the Napa Valley called Chateau Montelena. They're in Calistoga. And
if you've seen the movie Bottle Shock, that's the winery that's featured in Bottle Shock that was in the competition with the French Chardonnays. So
and they're the winery that won the contest with the Chardonnay. And they have transitioned from wanting some Botrytis character, because we always used to get it, to wanting none. And the way we've achieved that has been to do a lot of leaf thinning around the bunches, to have air drainage and model sunlight onto the bunches, so that it combats the incidence of any bunch rot. We can still get bunch rot. I think the last time we did it was 2011.
Yeah.
We lost half the crop in weight because of the eating of the insides, and also as even if a picker puts its bucket right under the bunch, it hits the stem, a lot of the berries will fall on the ground. It's not a grape grower's dream come true to have that situation. I made wine out of it, and the wine is terrific. It's just about, it's all gone. But it's not what you'd call the moneymaker of the year. And the late harvest that you're talking about, Bob, is the Botrytis. Now the Trockenbeeren Auslese, Beeren Auslese means dry berry, and Trocken means really dry. And there are pictures you see that sometimes the pickers on these steep hillsides in the Mosel Valley, where most of the Riesling comes from, have a little basket on their chest, and they'll pick out the berries that are just the driest ones and stick it in that little thing like this, and then dump it in. It's incredibly expensive stuff, and frankly, I don't know that it's worth it. Anyhow, that's the late harvest.
That's a good answer. I also like some of the commercial Rieslings on here. They have that little chart on the back of it, from dry on one end to sweet on the other end, and they have that little arrow. I think that is so useful.
Yeah, it is. You know, a lot of times in our tasting room, people will come in and we'll say, well, we've got a Riesling, and they'll say, oh, no, I don't like the sweet wines. And we say, you know, try it, you'll like it. And they try it, and it's got such good acid to it, because we have high acid in all our grapes, because we have a cool climate, that they really like it. And it's not sweet. There's a difference between fruity and sweet. Right. Something from the Central Valley could be sweet because it doesn't have the acid content. And even if they add acid, which you can do, it just doesn't have the same true ring to it that a true high residual sugar wine from the north coast of California has. So maybe we ought to swirl the 16, the second one around, and
This sucks.
it's been sitting long enough that it's got some, got a chance to warm up.
It's really interesting that seeing kind of the resurgence of the sweeter wine. Because I didn't really have an appreciation for it so much. I don't know, until maybe just kind of recently. I think you have to be eating the right thing with the sweet wine. The 19 Riesling you can sit and drink on its own, and it's a delicious
Yes.
glass of wine. The 16, I think you can do so in smaller quantities, but it's really good when you have the right food pairing with it. It really brings it out.
Oriental food, Thai food, it works well with that
You
too.
don't say Oriental anymore,
You don't say Oriental? They're from the Orient.
just Asian.
Oh,
Asian
that's sort of like you don't call China flu China.
We're right there. We're with you. Okay, we know.
All right,
We
so I
got
have
you.
a mushroom, caramelized onion, and linguiça pizza. And I have to tell you, it's absolutely delicious with it.
Yes.
Oh.
A little spicy from the linguiça.
And the caramelized
Onion,
onions.
it's sweet. Oh,
You know, when you started telling us about the mushroom and the caramelized onion and the linguiça, I thought you were using that as descriptors of what the wine.
I did too.
Now, remember I asked you on Thursday
Yeah.
what might be a good thing to eat with the Rieslings. And so I decided
How
I'd
about-
give this one a try. And it's
How about
so far, it's-
mushrooms and caramelized onions and linguiça? You think it'll go well?
well, it does. And then I've got a little bit of Spanish piment de ville on it to give it a little bit of spice. And
Okay.
I personally love spicy things with Riesling.
yes.
That's just my uneducated personal taste.
That's,
It's not uneducated. It's your personal taste, and that's perfect.
it's also very
Which
popular.
of these two would you prefer for the kinds of spicy foods you like?
The 16.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that. The 16 is, I think it's really a
Or-
terrific wine.
And it's got that wonderful floral quality to it that really complements spicy sweet stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, you and I are in a minority. Most people like the dry stuff.
I don't know.
I don't serve it to almost anybody because most people they don't know about Riesling.
Yes.
True.
It's kind of, I think it's almost, I prefer the 16 when they're side by side. I drink the 19 at home often. I also drink the Gewürztraminer a lot. That's one of my,
Oh,
I love the
favorites.
I love Gewürztraminer.
It's so good.
And
But
Gruner Veltliner.
Also,
Grüne Veltliner is the other one I love.
that's a
Yes.
great, yeah.
Veltliner. I always mispronounce that.
Gruner Ventler. Ventlier.
Veltliner, I guess it's
Ventlinger?
pronounced.
Gruner Ventler.
Veltliner.
Ventlinger.
Another one of those Austrian grapes that I don't think we have any of in this country.
Well, if we do, we don't have many. I bet you we do somewhere. Somebody has decided to plant it.
Yeah.
I'm toying with the idea of planting Albarino to make a Vinho Verde, which
I'll be on your doorstep.
you like. You know
I
Vinho
love
Verde from
Albarino.
Portugal?
I do.
I used to live in Portugal when I was in the Navy, and you could drink a bottle of it for lunch at 9% and not even get a buzz. It was just great stuff, fruity and spritzy, and I think it would do well here. So
I think
we'll
that'd be
see.
great. There are a couple people doing Albarinos. I
Yeah,
think Drew over in the Anderson Valley does an Albarino.
Oh.
And then there's some people down around, what's the big reservoir down between Napa and
Berryessa.
a couple wineries around Berryessa doing Albarino.
uh-huh.
Hmm.
I visited a man up in Oregon named Earl Jones, who is a real scientist, and a beautiful vineyard, and the wine was really good too. And Glenn McGordy, the farm advisor here has Albarino, and he made a spritzy Vinho Verde type wine from it, and it's pretty good. So I'm thinking about it.
What would you
I'll
take
buy
out?
it.
We've got some old Sauvignon Blanc vineyards that are ready to come out, like
The ones right by the
they're
table
right by the
grapes?
table grapes there. Yeah,
What, like
but-
a couple acres?
yeah, a couple acres maybe. You know, we've realized that after 50 years here, stuff is starting to get a little long in the tooth, and we're having to renew things. We took out some parts of Chardonnay, maybe 5 acres out of a 15-acre field, and we're going to replant that. And then we found out that we had some phylloxera in a Riesling vineyard, and I'm looking into taking out part of that field a little at a time. But one of the things I wanted to do was to test the budwood of the grapes that are in that field now, because when I was going to plant on a rootstock that's resistant to the newest mutation of phylloxera, you know, about 20 years ago, it became apparent that the AXR1 rootstock that has everybody been using for years was too closely associated to some other things, and these insects mutated so that they could attack right through the phylloxera. So a lot of vineyards went down, and it was terrible. So AXR has a reputation for hiding viruses that might be in the wood of what you want to pick. So I analyzed, I sent to a lab a few weeks ago some cuttings from our Riesling, and by God, it has a thing called red blotch, which is not good. So I have to search around now for clean Riesling wood. And there was a German fellow that came to visit here a month or two ago who's planting Riesling in the United States, and he has done a lot of research in finding clean wood. And hopefully that's where I could go to get the wood to rejuvenate my my Riesling patch. There's always something.
Farming.
Gotta put a roof on my house, new engines for the frost protection system. Oy, oy. But it's fun.
Thanks for putting me through college.
God, I'm glad that's over with. Now I've got to have grandfather duties with. She's gonna have a baby sometime soon.
Woo, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Very excited. I'm just having a child's pour.
The only problem is the father went to USC.
Yeah, well, you know that.
God. But he's a good guy, and he's crazy about my
There
daughter.
you go.
That's all you need.
She has a friend from high school, is this big, huge guy that took her to a prom when she was in high school, and he still kids me about the time that they were going out the door, and I said, what's his first name?
Very.
Barry. I said, Barry, if my daughter doesn't have a good time, I'm going to break your legs. He thought I meant it. I guess I should have been smiling a little bit more.
Did you have a good time?
I did. We had a great time.
At least she said she did. She was just, protecting Barry.
Yeah, exactly. Barry is still walking with his legs.
Barry's
intact.
about 6'4", and he weighs
Uh-huh.
about 220. And they went to the same grammar school, and when they were in 3rd grade or so, his father told me this story. They were all at dinner, he and his wife and their kids, several of them. And one of the girls, Michaela, said, Daddy, why don't you ask Barry what happened at school today? And Barry glared at her. And Bucky, the father, said, what happened at school? And he said, Aunt Fontaine beat me up. I guess he had done something to offend you.
Who knows?
And Barry said Bucky said he told Barry, he said, she's got 2 older brothers. You don't want to fool with a girl like that. She knows how to handle herself.
We're still good friends to this day.
Yeah, they are.
He was at our wedding. It all worked out.
You know, that's one of the nice parts about this part of the world. A lot of these kids come back. They like it here. They find ways to earn a good living here. And this is wonderful climate, slower pace.
Yeah.
Just a great place to raise a family. It's pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Mine are mostly in Massachusetts. I do have one daughter in Washington State, but the rest are in Massachusetts.
What parts of Massachusetts?
I have a son in,
Hanson,
uh-huh.
Josh and Whitman.
Oh yeah, Josh is in Whitman. He's a fireman and a pastor. So he's a pastor fireman. He was a pastor, and then he decided to become a fireman and a paramedic. So he does the fireman paramedic
Wow.
full time now, and sort of fills in when people need a pastor.
What's in Millis?
And then Millis is another son. Springfield, my daughter.
Mhm.
And then I do have a son down here in Florida, and then my daughter in Washington State.
Well, I've got a son in New York, where I grew up, a son in Lexington, Kentucky. He actually is an owner of the Kentucky Derby winner last year.
Oh,
He's in the
wow,
horse
nice.
business.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the race where they disqualified the guy that came in first,
Oh,
and
Yeah.
his horse was the other one.
They came in second.
Wow,
And
that
then,
was good.
We'll
got
take the win.
got two daughters in Thomasville, Georgia, where their mother was from. She's passed away. God, it was been 25 years.
27.
27 since Fontaine passed away. And then
Wow.
her, she's in Ukiah, right nearby.
The only one here.
Well, it has its benefits.
Yeah. And we get together quite often for being so far flung. We do get to see each other a lot, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
That's nice.
And
How many of you are in the business?
myself and my brother Jameson. Thank goodness. We don't need all of us involved. That would be crazy.
A couple of years ago, when I turned 80, we had a big party, and all the kids came. And the night before the big dinner, I had a barbecue out back behind the house, and I invited all the Mexicans who have worked here for all these years. Like my foreman's been here for 48 years. And everybody's got at least 30 or 40 years. They're getting old. Anyway, my foreman and I were sitting there watching as his kids and my kids were kind of reuniting and introducing their spouses and their kids. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Being organic, I think, means a lot. They realize that they're not going to go wandering around in a field that's just been dusted or sprayed with something that might just kill a little
Right.
bug, but it probably doesn't do a human being very much good either. So there's one good thing about it. They all know relatives or colleagues that have had problems with stuff that winds up being sprayed on the vineyards or the
Right.
pear trees.
So Guinness, how did you get into the business of drying herbs? Because I live on your herbs.
Mhm.
They're my favorite Christmas presents to all my family.
Well, thank you for that question. And I'll tell you an interesting thing about it. The reason our herbs are so good is the same as the reason our grapes are so good and our wines are so good, and that's the diurnal temperature. On a given afternoon in late summer, it could be 95 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The next morning at 6, it's 45. And that difference in the temperature keeps the essential oils of the acids at a high rate. And we try when we dry them, not to dry them with intense heat, just enough to keep them drying slowly. Although we did have an incident many years ago. We were selling to a Swedish company, and I got a telephone call, and the fellow said, the rosemary is moving. And I said, what do you mean the rosemary? Well, it's got worms in it. And so I had to fly to Sweden and take a look. And yeah, the worms were at the top of this plastic bag that the rosemary was in. So of course I took the whole load and sent it back to the United States, and I got samples and took it into the local ag commissioner. He said, oh yeah, tobacco moth. You know, it probably laid its eggs when it was out in the field, and when you dried them, you didn't heat it up enough. And I said, well, how am I supposed to heat it and keep the same quality? Well, he said the last half hour, if you want to heat it at 105 degrees, fine, but the last half hour, jack it up to about 130, and that'll kill all the eggs. So we've never had a problem since then. So one of the reasons we kept the temperature down was because we didn't want to volatilize those essential oils. We want you to do it when you put it and you mix it up and put it on your food. We want you to smell it then. So that's, I appreciate your comment on our herbs.
How did it start, and what did it start with first?
Well, I had a garden, you know, just around the house.
Yeah.
And basil was what you always plant. And rosemary, you know, we got rosemary all over the place now. There's culinary rosemary and then this other stuff, but it's still rosemary.
Mm-hmm.
And we are one of the northernmost vineyard areas in the state. And because of that, we come in later than everybody else in ripening. And I had difficulties initially finding people to pick, because they've been up here in the United States from Mexico for 6-7 weeks or more, and they're ready to go home. So I tried to develop some year-round kind of work to keep people occupied for the whole time. So the way our year goes, we start in January, we prune, and that usually lasts till the end of February and the beginning of March, depending on the weather. If we get rain, we take herbs and we package them, so everybody's working all the time. Then we get ready for the springtime with working in the vineyards, and then we sucker and pull leaves. And then in the meantime, there are various herbs that we have to harvest and then dry them and process them. And then we make garlic raids in July and August. And then we're getting ready to harvest, so we get ready for that. We harvest grapes. That's about a 6 or 7 week period where everybody's busy. And then we go into bay leaf reeds for the Christmas time.
Wow.
And by the time we're done, there's a full year worth of work, and these folks don't have to run around and try to figure out the next place they can work to get a meal on the table.
So the herbs are fabulous.
Yeah.
I love them.
Thank you. Is that a dog?
Cat.
That's a cat.
There's a dog behind Fontaine.
Yep. This
Or
is Annie.
underneath
This is Annie.
There's a dog on either side of me too.
This is a pound dog. We found her in Ukiah.
She's the best.
This is a
behind me is
stray
a
cat. A
skateboardist.
stray cat turned house cat. Right, bud?
My gray dog behind me is the escape artist. He came to us by way of jumping over the fence. The third time he did it, we told the owner that we think he likes it better here, so can we keep him? And then he proceeded to escape out of our yard.
Oh, no.
We have an invisible fence.
We have a cat named Eugene, which is my first name. My friend Magruder gave him to us and already named him. But he and Annie have an interesting relationship. Annie is well aware of the fact that Eugene is off limits. Besides, if she looked at him cross-eyed, Eugene would swat her across the nose.
Yeah.
She came as a puppy, and he kind of straightened her out right away. That's the way cats work on dogs. Yeah.
Annie wants to play with everybody and be friends with everyone. And
Ah,
Gene is not a people person.
No, he's not.
Well, my sister just inherited my mother's dog, who is a very spoiled Princess Whippet. My sister has a 15-pound cat named Blue. And the dog walked into the house and Blue stalked the cat and the dog ghosted into the corner. And to this day, the cat will look at the dog and the dog goes, runs in the corner and hides. Perfect. She's gone from being queen bee spoiled to being number 3.
Years ago, we were burning some refuse, and as the flame sort of was going up the hill slowly, one of the guys saw a little doe or a little fawn, a deer, and instinctively, when they sense danger, they're supposed to get real still. But the flame was coming, so they scooped up this deer, and that sort of ruined her for her mother. So they took her home. She was small enough, she was about this tall standing up. And she was small enough she could get up underneath a goat that was nursing kids.
Oh
So
my.
she nursed for a while, but then she started growing to the point where she couldn't get up under, so they had to milk the goat to get her milk. And in the meantime, she's hanging around, and it didn't take her long to realize that all the dogs were told, that is not somebody you chase. This is somebody that has special privileges. And that deer was meaner than a snake. I mean, these dogs would come around and she would arch her neck and start doing this with her front. And the dog just ran for the nearest car to get up underneath it to get away with it. Her name was Lisa, and she loved Fruit Loops. And you'd go to feed her. The deer have a tongue that must be this long because she'd wrap her tongue totally around your finger to get the Fruit Loops. And we cut a hole with a clipper or a hole puncher in her ear so we could look at her and tell her, because we let her wander around and she'd disappear for several days. And well, she went up and met this smooth talking buck somewhere. So,
oh boy.
a year later, she shows up right here at the house with two of her own fawns. And I looked out and I said, by God, that's Lisa. I thought she had gone to Covelo. But I went out, I got some Fruit Loops, and she came up and she started eating the Fruit Loops, and her 2 kids went berserk. Ma, they were bleeding like crazy. What are you doing? And there's a dog right there. And the dog, it was pretty funny. And that's the last I saw of Lisa, but I'm sure she's had a happy life. She's probably still up there telling her friends how to act around human beings.
Right.
That way you're safe and you get all the Fruit Loops you can eat. Oh, and she would, during bay leaf wreath time, she would lie there and be on a big bed of bay leaves and, grab a leaf to eat every once in a while. And then the best time for her was lunchtime, because everybody would feed her lunch, their sandwiches. And she could eat anything. She was great.
Wow.
Lisa.
Do
Well,
you guys have any fox on the property?
any what?
Any fox?
Occasionally you'll see one, not often. The only one I ever saw, we had to shoot because it had rabies. That it's mostly a nighttime animal. We have a sign of lions occasionally. Right at the end of harvest time, when we're trying to pick the Zinfandel, we have bears breaking into the vineyard in the back, because just behind us is nothing but national forest. So we have a lot of those.
Mountain
And
lions.
we've got some mountain lions. I've never seen one, but I've heard them. And
Thank goodness.
we've got
I don't wanna see
turkeys and bobcats. I had a dog once. We were walking along the vineyard, and this bobcat just came flying out of a tree, boom, and hit the ground and started running. And my dog had a lab, went running after it, and I tried to stop it. but it came back about an hour later. It was all cut up. It probably
Wow.
was being caught up with the bobcat, but that wasn't a pleasant experience. So I don't think we ever
Oh.
faced the bobcat again.
I guess
And
Live and learn.
we've got birds. We've got Canadian honkers this year that are walking around in the vineyard, and we've got ducks and egrets, blue herons, white herons. We've got swallows that come back every year, much to the dismay of Judith, because they make their nests in the garage and poop on everything in sight.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Judith is his better half.
But
Yeah.
they eat mosquitoes. You don't want to entirely get rid of them.
Oh, they do. Interesting.
Yeah.
oh, they eat what?
Mosquitoes.
Oh, they eat
Mosquitoes.
everything. Yeah, they're out at, especially at twilight.
Yeah.
They're flying
Yeah,
around and
They keep
Basically, that is mosquito poop that they're pooping.
It's okay as long as the mosquito is dead. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, big
we've got some bat cages or bat things that you never could believe that a bat will fit into something this wide, but they go up in there and they hang out during the day and then come out at night and eat mosquitoes and insects and all sorts of other
Right.
things too. And we've got river otters in the river, which means we don't have a whole lot of fish in the river when they're around. But
Okay, I love river otter.
they are fun to watch. But I'd hate to run into one in the if you're swimming around, because they're all muscle and teeth and just really beautiful.
They don't want to eat
animals.
you.
Hmm?
They're not going to eat you.
Well,
They
if you're in
want
the water,
shelter.
if you're in the water scuba diving or something, they may not know the difference. You might look like a
I've
tasty
never
person.
heard. Never heard. I've been on. I don't know. I have never seen a river otter go after a person.
Yes.
Well, that's good to know.
I'd rather have a fish.
I won't
yeah,
worry
yeah.
now.
Yeah. Perfect.
We have a very kind of rare bird down here. It's called a sandhill crane.
Oh, I love them.
Oh, they just
beautiful.
walk down our driveway and they're all
Yeah,
over the
they're
place. It's one of the
beautiful.
most populous area for them in the south.
Where are you exactly, Bob?
Yeah.
In Florida.
We're about an hour north of Tampa.
Okay.
Okay.
We're almost directly
Just about.
across from Disney World.
Just about on the
you
coast.
know,
And
Okay.
so, but
Okay.
they're beautiful birds. When they fly, when they put their legs straight out, they are so long and they're wing, but the sound they make,
Oh.
elegant. I mean, it's like, meow, you're so beautiful. Can you just change your pitch a little bit?
Tell
Little
them to stop singing.
Yes. But they are beautiful.
That's cool. That's cool.
And we have coyotes also.
lots of coyotes
We
all
have
night
them.
long.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You
I
also
didn't even know what they
have,
were at first because they sound like dogs.
They do. They bark.
Yeah.
But so does
Yeah.
fox. Fox bark too.
Oh,
Yeah.
do they?
Yeah.
You also have a kind of a python problem growing in the Everglades.
Down,
and in
yeah,
different
down
swamps.
further. Yeah.
Further south.
Yeah.
Further south.
And they
yeah.
better
Pretty
stay
wild.
down.
And it's
Yeah.
my understanding is that Florida has been paying people to hunt these pythons.
Right.
Yes.
And they're just,
yes.
I mean,
Enormous.
I can't imagine anything. I don't like snakes. I can deal with spiders
No,
and
she
bugs and
doesn't.
everything, but snakes, not for me. A python is just,
No snake. I'm not a snake person.
yeah.
I almost shudder to mention this. We had a rat get
Oh.
through our house and pop up in one of our toilets.
Oh,
Oh,
Well, it was a flooding time. It
guess-
was lots and lots of rain, and I think that
And
made
in Central Florida, I guess there is a big rat problem. Of course, we didn't know that.
uh-huh.
We've had ice in our up north, but I've never seen a rat. Well, no, I really just on TV.
Yeah.
But so, oh boy, in the toilet. It took me a long time to be able to go.
I just came out of the shower and I heard some noise. I was pretty sure what it was, but I didn't want to alarm Mary. I said, "Hey, Mary, can you come here?" Mouse in the toilet.
oh my.
And she goes, "That's no mouse. That's a rat."
I tried showing the cat. The cat wanted nothing to do with
The
it.
interesting thing is how we got rid of him. She took the took the barbecue tongs, and while I was on guard, she squeezed it. And then we had this aluminum ashes and things, and put it in that, put the top over it. But anyway.
It was still
Oh, my
alive?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And you were able
so
to
you go
catch it with
online.
the tongs when it was alive? Wow.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Did you
I
see the
bet.
movie? Did you see the movie Psycho? With
Yes.
It was years before I would take a shower without locking the door of whatever bathroom I was in.
Seriously.
It was
It's like
such a creepy movie.
1984.
Did you see the movie?
1984 with the cage with the rat.
No, but after Psycho, I don't like to watch things like that. I watch chick films that always have happy endings,
True.
and John Wayne movies.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Victory at Sea.
2 films. Go
Victory.
figure.
Lonesome Dove.
True. And Lonesome
Did you
Dove.
see The Exorcist?
Oh, God, no.
The Exorcist.
No.
The Exorcist was the first movie I had to go out, grab the book, and read it to sort of cleanse myself from all of the, the perceptions, all the visual stuff that I had seen in the movie, because it was so frightening.
It was
I just called Father Mulcahy, and he says, well, it didn't happen that way. Don't you be worried.
Yeah.
oh, that's a scary one.
Well,
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't-
kind of
I'm
like
not-
having a cocktail party. This is fun stuff.
Yeah.
It is.
We're going to
Yeah.
do it again soon in the next week or two with our Brut and Brut Rosé, the sparkling wines that we make,
Oh,
which are,
count me in.
we'll do.
We'll
You're-
have details about it in our newsletter that will go out, I think, on Tuesday.
And we're discovering that probably Wednesday or Thursday in the afternoon is probably, or the evening is the best time. A lot of people are off doing stuff, even though they're supposed to be sheltering in place.
Right.
They're out and about. So
But we
This
were
is fun
trying to
for us.
time our dinner. We were trying to time our dinner because it's, we're 3 hours later than you are. So we said, 3 o'clock would be a great time for this if it was 3 o'clock here.
Well,
But we,
So it's, yeah. It's
so I've
4 to
never done
7.
this before at 6 o'clock. But you know what? It's been,
hey, Bob, the sun is over the yard arm. It's time to have a drink.
this is time for after dinner drinks.
I'm ready for bed.
What's the consensus? Do you have a preference between the 16 and the 19? Ginny, you said 16.
The 16.
Mm-hmm.
But I love to drink Riesling by itself. So I love the 19
Mhm.
like that. So I can drink it I don't need anything with it.
Right.
And if with something to have, I would love the 16. I'd rather have the 16 with something to eat with it.
Okay, wait a minute now. I think I drank all of the 19.
I also am
Oh,
crazy
refill.
about mouthfeel.
Refill,
One of the reasons I love Gewürztraminer. Gewürztraminer to me has one of the greatest mouthfeels. I can chew my wine. Instead of like Belgian ales or Gers, things like that. I like doing that.
Wow.
And the 16 to me is so much more mouthfeel.
It has such a distinctive characteristic. It's the only grape I have, and I have 7 varieties, that I can taste the wine when I have taste the grape
The
right
Gewürz,
as we pick it,
you mean?
the Gewürz.
Mhm.
It's really a distinctive flavor, and it's really, really good. It's the only one we pick with machine, though. It's just a horrible thing. It's got tiny little bunches that are hidden deep amongst the vine, and I'd have a mutiny if I got the guys in there to try to pick. As a matter of fact, we're going to start picking with other machines too. I hesitated for years because that's the big payday of the year for my employees, and then I started noticing that the real fast pickers, the one that make big bucks, were the young guys. They're not our crew, and our crew were the checkers and the tractor drivers and the supervisors, and they're getting old and long in the tooth, and it doesn't make any difference to them at all if we pick by machine. My foreman said that's fine with us. We don't have to bust our asses so much to pick by hand and get all gooey and juicy. She's got 2 sisters that went to a very fancy prep school in Northern Virginia called Madeira. right across the Potomac from DC. And one year we had an early picking, so I enlisted them to help pick. And they were driving tractors and checking and stuff like that. And it's still a vivid memory going down after harvest and everybody sitting around. We usually have a couple of beers or a couple of soft drinks for everybody after harvest, after the day of harvest. And here are my two preppy daughters sitting with a bunch of Mexicans having a beer. And they were at 16, 17 years old. And they earned it. So that was fun. Yeah, pretty
So
neat.
Guinness, what about doing a side-by-side of Riesling and Gewürz for one of your virtuals?
Ooh,
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good
like
idea,
that.
Jenny.
I think that'd be interesting.
Mhm.
Make both, and they're both really good.
Would you do the 19 or the 16?
I do the 16.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
I think so.
because I really like German varietals, and I think the 16 is closer to a German varietal than the 19.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
I agree.
But I'm weird, so
Well,
Well,
don't
I
use
guess
me
we
as
are too.
Bob is also weird.
don't, when somebody says weird, I want to say how weird, and then I don't want to get into any stories. Okay, but I touched Jimi Hendrix, by the way, while he was alive.
Okay.
While he was alive, yes,
On the shoulder.
in 1969 at a concert.
That's big time.
I was at Woodstock. But that doesn't make you weird.
No,
That's
but when
kinda
you
big-
do your
He's the
gardening,
most
listening to
famous man
you,
that I ever met.
it might be weird, and that would be me.
I had a long conversation alone with Hubert Humphrey once.
Oh,
You spoke
Hubert
with
Horatio Humphrey, HHH.
Yeah.
Prince.
Oh, Prince
Queen.
Philip.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was just, the Royal Navy Admiral introduced me and said, this is a naval officer. Her name is Guinness McFadden. And Prince Philip said, oh, how nice, Thing about it was,
Personality of a
he wasn't
toad.
any taller than I was. She must be a shrimp because he looks like he's a giant
Right.
next to the Queen.
No, he's about my height. I can tell you because at the 1984 Olympics, I had the experience of allowing him across the cross-country track and cutting off his entourage because a horse was coming.
Oh.
His
Cool.
entourage was not happy with me. He got it. But a horse galloping at 26 miles an hour, you don't want to be running over humans.
No. Wow.
Wow. What were you doing at the
It's the only
1980?
time I can ever claim to have seen Prince Philip, except on television.
Were you in the Olympics? What
Oh,
was
God. Volunteer.
that?
My
Okay.
mother, because she was super horsey, was one of the stewards on the Olympic course down in San Diego. They got all the masters of foxhounds around California to serve as the stewards to make sure that the crowd didn't get out of control. They could catch loose horse. Me down there basically to braid her horse every day
Uh-huh.
and make sure he got fed and watered to the day of the Olympics, because I was doing horse duty and she was drinking in the background, but volunteered. I still have the t-shirt somewhere for being a volunteer on the golf course.
Cool.
Wow.
It was fun.
Vice President Humphrey was visiting the embassy in Lisbon when I was the Admiral's aide, and we were supposed to have a briefing for him. And the schedule was he was to show up at 10:15 or so in the morning, and they were in the Admiral's office briefing for the briefing, getting ready. And they told me, get us out of there at 10 o'clock so we're down there early so that we don't, Anyhow, about 5 to 10, 20 minutes before he's supposed to arrive, the Secret Service guy sticks his head in, and then Humphrey comes marching in. And I went, "Ah!" And I looked at the door of the Admiral's office like I'm a dead man. He's supposed, first thing Humphrey said is, they're in there briefing for me? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, Lieutenant, why don't I sit down and wait for a while? So he sat next to the desk where I usually give dictation, and I'm in uniform. So he sees that I've been in Vietnam, he asked me some questions about that, and I thought, well, I've already written my resignation. I could give him an earful about what I think of that. And inside, the admiral saying, "What's wrong with Guinness? He should have called us." "Jack," he said, that this fella, "find out what's wrong." And the door opens, and this Navy captain, Captain Corson, sees the vice president sitting at the desk at my table. And then he goes, and then on his way look in, he gives me this look like, "You are dead."
Dead.
And the admiral comes rushing out. First thing vice president said was, "Lieutenant McFadden wanted to break in, but I told him to have you go ahead and keep on with the briefing. So let's get on with it." So first thing he did was defend me. And I didn't get sent to Iceland.
That's a class act.
He was a classy guy. It seems like the higher up they get, for the most part, they're pretty good guys. Like General Lemnitzer, Lyman Lemnitzer was a 4-star Army general and just a really good guy. And Carrie Moore, the wife of a 4-star admiral, I had to get her over to the admiral's house for dinner, and all the cars were out. So I had to pick her up at the Ritz Hotel in Lisbon in my Jaguar. And she came out.
At least you had a Jack.
I still have it. I'll be driving it in about 2 weeks. It's a 63 Mark II. Anyhow, you'll see it around Ukiah. Anyhow, I picked her up and I opened the back door, and she said, "No, can I sit in the front?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." So we got into it, and she said, "What kind of car is this? It's very nice." And I said, "It's a Jaguar." And we get on the only piece of freeway in Portugal at the time, this 10 miles or so outside of Lisbon. And she said, "How fast can it go?" And I said, "It can go pretty fast." She said, "Can it go 100?" I said, "Oh yeah, I can go 100." She said, "Can we go 100?" I said, thinking to myself, this is really dumb. I said, "Yes, ma'am, we can go 100. So I got it to 100 for about 2 minutes, and then we had to slow down because the road ended. And I just sort of chuckled. I said, "You know, if we'd have been in a crash, I hoped I'd be dead, because your father, or your husband, would kill me if we got into a crash." She was very nice.
It's nice to be able to remember all of that.
You should write it down, Guinness.
Yeah,
Good point.
the ex-king
You
of
really should at
Spain.
least just dictate into your phone or a dictaphone. Those are just wonderful stories.
They
Well,
are.
I've told them enough to people. Somebody will remember them. The ex-king of Spain was living in Portugal, Don Juan, and his son Juan Carlos is now the king.
Right.
And Don Juan, they were all sorts of, Fulgens Batista was there, Umberto of Italy, Neki Hoki of Czechoslovakia, or wherever the hell he was from. There were lots of people who were exiled, and they all came with money. And this guy, Don Juan, had gone to the Royal Naval Academy in Dartmouth, England. And they say he had an anchor tattooed on his forearm. He was in the Royal Navy. But he had a boat. And I had a bunch of buddies, and one of whom owned a boat. And since I was in the Navy, they figured I'd know about boats. I didn't know anything about sailboats, but we had great times. We'd sail down the coast of Portugal on these races, and we'd put into a fishing village and spend the night and then start out the next day. It was sort of a weekend or 3-day deal. And I knew that he had a boat, and I taught my guys how to render passing honors with a bosun pipe. And I had a bosun pipe, and I could go. So I did, and his boat was coming out of port, and I did that, and I said, "Attention to starboard," and we all stood at attention, and he was in the cockpit, and he stood up, and I said, "Hand salute," and we all saluted, and he saluted back, and I said, "Carry on," and blew it again. Well, that night, we're in the next port, and there was only one restaurant in town, so all the crews are in there, and he comes over to our table, and he said, "Who's in the Navy?" And they all pointed to me, and I got up and introduced myself, and He said, you know, that's the first time I've been honored since I left Spain. King of
Oh.
Spain. Yeah, pretty
Oh,
neat. So the Admiral and I,
I
my
hope he
boss,
bought you a drink.
we're at a cocktail party and we're in civilian clothes, but my Admiral was a Medal of Honor winner, Congressional Medal of Honor. And there's a little rosette that with the light peacock blue ribbon with little white stars. And he's wearing it. So the king comes over to me and the Admiral knew who he was. And he comes over and says, Lieutenant. I said, sir. I said, sir, this is my boss, Admiral Flucky. And he says hello. And then he says, congratulations on your Medal of Honor, Admiral. Where did you win it? And he said, well, I was in the submarines during World War II. They chatted for a minute. And then he went away. He said, good seeing you again, Lieutenant. Good seeing you, sir. The Admiral turns to me and says, how do you know him? I said, he's a racing buddy, Admiral. We see him every weekend.
King of Spain. An old
Yeah.
friend.
My boss, the Admiral,
Portugal
was the highest
Interesting.
decorated living American when he died. He
Wow.
had the Congressional Medal of Honor and 4 Navy Crosses, which were the second.
4?
4 of them. He was a
Wow.
submarine. And yeah, he was.
in this Pacific.
Yes, yes. And I think he had
I
more
lived
tonnage
and
than
breathed
any of
those
the
books.
submariners. Pardon?
I lived and breathed those books as a teenager. Dust on the Sea. I forget the first one. Neville Beach was the author.
Uh-huh.
Stories. He was a captain of a submarine
Neville
in
Shute.
World War II.
Neville Shute.
Neville Shute. Okay.
Yes, it was. The beach was about the atomic bomb had gotten
Oh,
everything
no,
out.
no, not that. No, Neville Beach. He was a
Neville-
submariner. He
submariner.
wrote a book called Dust on the Sea, and he wrote another one before thinking on the name of it. But I was utterly fascinated with the whole idea of warfare underwater. I told you I'm unnatural. Girls aren't supposed to read war books. I read war books.
Well, my boss wrote a book called Thunder Below, which he sold me a copy of. And you say, he sold you a copy, you're his aide. Yeah, he sold me a copy. What he did, it was suitably inscribed, but he would take the money from the sale of the book and take his crew on trips. And his wife told me one time that he went to a place called Mercersburg Academy in Pennsylvania before he went to the Naval Academy. And he was going to give the commencement address. So they're racing down the road in Pennsylvania and a state trooper pulled him over for speeding. His wife said, not only did Gene not get a ticket, but he sold that trooper a book, which inscribed. And we got a motorcycle escort to get there on time.
All the way.
And that was him. He was,
Okay, remember
he was something else.
the other book was Run Silent, Run Deep,
Oh, yeah.
which was made into a movie. That was the first book, and the second was Dust on the Sea.
There's a kid here that works in the Potter Valley powerhouse, one of the Lily boys who was in an attack boat that was running around doing stuff under the water against the Russians. There's a book called Blind Man's Bluff. Blind Man's Bluff. It tells stuff that when I was in the Navy, that was top secret stuff about the underwater, almost hot war between the Russian submarines and when I was in the missile crisis on a destroyer, the Russian submarines were so noisy you could almost stick your ear in the water and hear them. We were having contacts all the time. We were at general quarters for days in a row, just herding them out of the area. But now I guess they're pretty good and silent.
My uncle Jimmy Kinnear was on a submarine after he got out of the Naval Academy. He was in Korea. He did 3 tours.
Uh-huh.
And that had to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever talk about it,
Well, you're not supposed to. It's classified.
I guess. Most of your generation doesn't talk about the war.
Oh, I do. The older I get, the braver I was.
I'm sure it was true then, and it's still true now.
Well,
Great.
thank you.
I like that. That's a good one. I haven't heard that. It's good. Clever. Well,
That is great.
Well, I guess we're finished talking about everything.
Till the next one.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes,
we'll do it again.
we have really enjoyed this.
We'll pick a date for it. We want to make sure it's in enough time so that people can get the brute shipped to them. So we might make it for next month, but we'll include the details in the newsletter that comes out on Tuesday.
Yay. Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Yes,
Thank
you.
yes.
It's wonderful.
Thank
It's a little bit of social isolated time.
Yes.
Take care.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye, Mary and Bob. Bye,
Nice to
Ginny. See
meet
you
you
later.
all.
Bye.
You bet.
night.
Thanks.
Bye, Anne Fontaine. Oh, no, you're right
Bye,
here,
Daddy.
but you're right there.